The night was cold. The wind howled across the empty land. Broken trees bent under the storm, and the sky was heavy with black clouds. Lightning flashed, and for a short moment, the ground lit up. In that quick light, a small figure could be seen. It was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin carried a faint blue glow, her eyes brighter than the stars above. She was weak, tired, and covered in dust. Each step she took was slow. Her breath shook with every movement. She had been running for days, searching for safety. Her people were gone. The war had ended badly for her kind. She was the only one left. Alone, afraid, and hungry, she wandered through the ruins of a land once filled with life. As thunder rolled in the distance, she saw something strange. Half, hidden under broken rocks, a metal door glinted in the rain. She froze. Her heart pounded. Could it be a trap? Could it belong to the humans, the very beings she had been told to fear? But she was too weak to keep walking. If she stayed outside, the storm would kill her. Slowly, carefully, she pushed away the rocks. The door was heavy, but she used all her strength until it opened with a loud creak. Darkness waited below. A narrow staircase led into the ground. She hesitated. "Should I go inside?" she whispered to herself. Her voice was small, almost lost in the wind. She remembered the stories told by her people. Humans are dangerous. Humans do not forgive. If they find you, they will end you. But she had no choice. Shaking, she stepped down into the unknown. The air grew warmer as she went deeper. The sound of the storm faded. Finally, she reached the bottom of the stairs and stepped into a wide underground room. She gasped. It was a shelter, a human shelter. Metal walls surrounded her. Shelves lined the room, filled with strange tools, boxes of supplies, and glowing lights. There was a bed in the corner, still made, a table with scattered maps. On the wall, screens and machines hummed quietly, still alive after all this time. The alien girl's stomach growled. She had not eaten for days. Slowly, she opened a small box on the shelf. Inside, she found sealed packets of food. She smelled one, strange but not rotten. She took a small bite, then another, until she finished it all. Warmth spread through her body. For the first time in weeks, she felt a little stronger. She walked slowly around the room. Her fingers brushed against human objects. A knife, a flashlight, a water bottle. Everything here felt different. Sharp, cold, and practical. Humans built not for beauty, but for survival. She sat on the bed. The softness surprised her. She closed her eyes for a moment, and for the first time since the war, she almost felt safe. But her peace did not last. Her eyes opened wide as a thought struck her. This shelter belongs to someone. What if the human comes back? Her heart raced. She looked around, searching for hiding places. Behind the crates in the corner, a small gap was big enough for her to fit. She crawled in and pulled the shadows around her. From there, she could see the whole room while staying hidden. Time passed slowly. She listened to the hum of the machines, the dripping of water, and the faint echoes of the storm above. Alone in the shelter, she whispered to herself, "I will stay here, I will survive. But if the human returns, he must never see me." Her eyes flickered with both fear and determination. She had found a place to live, a chance to survive. But deep inside, she knew this was not her shelter. It was his. And one day, he would come back. The girl pulled her knees close to her chest. The silence pressed in, heavy and deep. Every sound made her flinch, every shadow made her breath catch. Still, she stayed hidden. For now, she was safe. But safety, she knew, would not last forever. The alien girl woke up to silence. The storm above had passed, but the memory of thunder still echoed in her mind. She stretched slowly on the human's bed, then quickly sat up, remembering where she was. This was not her place. This was a human's shelter. She could not let herself feel too safe. She looked around carefully. The machine still hummed softly, lights glowing faintly in the dark room. She moved across the floor, her bare feet quiet against the cold metal. Every corner of the shelter told her something about the human who once lived here, or maybe still lived here. On the table, maps of the land were spread out, marked with human symbols she did not understand. A knife rested on the edge, sharp and polished. Boxes of food were stacked neatly on the shelves. Everything was in order, as if the human planned to come back soon. Her heart beat faster at the thought. If he comes back, what will he do to me? But hunger reminded her she could not leave. She opened another packet of human food. The taste was strange, salty, strong, but it filled her stomach. She drank water from a steel bottle, cool and clean. Slowly, she felt alive again. Days passed. She made the shelter her secret home. She never left, afraid of what might be waiting outside. She slept on the bed when she felt brave, but most nights she hid behind the supply crates. From there, she watched the room in silence, as if waiting for footsteps that never came. At first, she touched nothing, but loneliness pushed her to explore. She held the human's flashlight, clicked it on, and smiled when light spilled into the darkness. She pressed buttons on the machines and listened to the soft beeps. She found a blanket, wrapped it around her thin shoulders, and felt comfort for the first time in weeks, but comfort brought guilt. She whispered to herself, "This is not mine, this is his." She could not forget. The shelter was a human's creation. She was only a shadow hiding in it. Sometimes, in the quiet hours, memories of her people returned. She remembered her mother's voice warning her. Humans are dangerous. They build, they fight, they never stop. If they find you, you will not escape. The alien girl trembled at those words. She pulled the blanket tighter around her, wishing the fear away. But the fear stayed. One night, as she sat in the corner, she heard a faint sound, a low hum from the door above. She froze. Her body went stiff, her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, the sound faded. Perhaps it was just the storm outside or the earth shifting. Still, it reminded her that she was not safe forever. She began to plan. If the human returned, she would stay silent. She would hide. She would never show herself. It became her rule. Her survival depended on it. The shelter became her world. The shelves of food, the humming machines, the maps she could not read. All of it was strange, but it became her routine. She counted time by the flicker of the lights and the rhythm of her heartbeat. Loneliness grew heavy. Sometimes she spoke softly to the walls. "I am not afraid," she whispered, though her shaking hands told another story. Other times she closed her eyes and imagined voices of her people, though she knew they would never return. Yet even in her loneliness, she began to see something different in the human shelter. It was not only a place of fear, it was also a place of survival. Humans had built it to last, to protect, to keep life alive. She thought about that often. If humans are truly monsters, why do they build places like this? Why do they keep food and warmth? Her fear fought with her curiosity. She wanted to hate the shelter. She wanted to fear the human. But deep inside, another thought whispered, perhaps the human is not like the stories. Still, she did not trust it. She stayed hidden. She trained herself to be silent. When she moved like a shadow. When she breathed softly, as if even air could betray her. One evening, as she sat in the corner, she heard another sound. This time, not from the storm. A faint clicking above. The machines near the door came alive, blinking with sudden light. Her heart pounded in her chest. She pressed her back against the crates, eyes wide. She whispered to herself, "No, not yet. Please, not yet." The sound faded again, leaving silence. But the message was clear. The human might return soon. The shelter was not hers to keep, and if he came back, would he find her? Would he spare her? Or would the stories be true? She hugged her knees close, trembling. The shelter had given her life, but it also carried a shadow of danger. For now, she was still safe. But the clock was ticking. The day of his return was closer than ever. The alien girl sat in the corner of the shelter, wrapped in a thin blanket she had taken from the human's bed. The hum of the machines filled the silence, but her thoughts were louder. She stared at the wall, her eyes empty, as memories slowly rose inside her mind she did not want to remember. But the memories came anyway. She saw her home again, her village under the twin moons, her people walking through glowing fields, her mother's gentle smile. It had been peaceful once, a world filled with laughter, songs, and the warm light of her people's fires. But then, the humans came. At first, they were only shadows in the sky, ships that burned through the clouds. Then came the soldiers, tall, armored, their voices loud and harsh. Her people had tried to hide, they built walls, dug tunnels, prayed to the stars, but it was not enough. The humans had fire that fell from the sky, weapons that cracked mountains. Her people's defenses crumbled in days. She remembered running through the smoke, holding her little brother's hand. She remembered the sound of explosions, the ground shaking, the sky turning red, and she remembered the screams. Her brother had slipped away in the chaos. She searched for him, but he was gone. When she found her mother again, it was too late. A blast had torn through the home she once knew. Her mother's last words had been soft, but sharp. Run. Run, and never let a human find you. The girl pressed her hands to her face as the memory crushed her chest. Even now, the words rang like a curse in her ears. She had run. She had never stopped running. And now she was here, hiding in the very heart of what her mother feared most, a human's secret shelter. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered to herself, "They are dangerous. They are monsters." But another voice inside her pushed back. If they are monsters, why did this human build a shelter with food, water, and warmth? Why leave behind life instead of death? She shook her head, refusing the thought. She could not allow herself to believe in kindness. Kindness was a lie, it would only lead to pain. The shelter was quiet, but her memories made it loud. She remembered the human soldiers, their heavy boots crushing the earth. She remembered their faces, stone cold, unfeeling, their eyes shining like glass. She remembered how her people had begged for peace, and how the humans had answered with fire. Her hands trembled. She pulled the blanket tighter, hiding inside it, as if it could protect her from the ghosts of her past. But fear was not the only memory. There had been something else. She remembered one night during the war. She had been lost, cornered between falling walls. A human soldier had found her. She expected death, but he had not killed her. He had only stared at her, his weapon trembling in his hands. For a moment she saw confusion in his eyes. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away, leaving her alive. That moment had haunted her as much as the fear. She had asked herself 1,000 times, why? Why did he let me live? She thought about that as she looked around the shelter. Could this be the place of another human like him, someone different? Or was it just another trap, another reminder that humans were unpredictable, dangerous, impossible to understand? Her stomach twisted. Trusting a human was foolish. She told herself that again and again. But no matter how many times she whispered it, the memory of that soldier's mercy would not leave her. The machines around her flickered softly, pulling her back to the present. She rubbed her eyes and took a deep breath. She was alive. That was all that mattered. The past could not touch her if she stayed hidden. Still, the fear was carved deep inside her. It guided her every move. It made her footsteps silent, her breath shallow. It reminded her over and over that discovery meant death. And yet another thought, softer, whispered against the fear. What if discovery did not mean death? What if it meant something else? She pushed it away, but it returned each night like a shadow she could not escape. As she lay down on the human's bed, Her eyes refused to close. Every sound from above, the groan of the earth, the rustle of wind, sounded like footsteps. She imagined the door opening, the human standing there, his eyes sharp, his voice cold. She imagined him finding her and ending everything in an instant. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She clutched the blanket, heart racing. The fear was her companion. The fear was her cage. But in that cage, there was also the smallest spark of something else, something she could not name, and she hated herself for feeling it. The alien girl woke to a strange sound. At first, she thought it was only her imagination, the hum of machines or the echo of her dreams. But then it came again. A faint click, sharp and mechanical, somewhere above the shelter. Her eyes widened. Her body froze. She sat still, her ears straining. The shelter had always been quiet. The only sounds came from the machines that hummed, softly, the drip of water from a pipe or the faint groan of the earth above. But this sound was different. It was not the voice of the shelter. It was something new, something alive. She crawled quickly to her hiding place behind the crates. Her heart pounded so loudly she was afraid the sound itself would betray her. She pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes, trying to calm her breath. Minutes passed. The sound stopped. Silence filled the air again. But the silence was heavier now. It pressed against her chest, warning her. Something was coming. The alien girl stayed hidden for a long time. When nothing else happened, she finally crept out, her movements slow and careful. She looked up at the ceiling. The heavy metal door at the top of the stairs was still closed. But she could not ignore what she had heard. "The human," she whispered. "He is near." That night, she could not sleep. She stayed curled up, in her corner, eyes locked on the staircase, waiting for the door to open. The next day, another sign appeared. The machines near the wall flickered suddenly, glowing brighter than before. For weeks they had been steady, constant, almost forgotten. But now, lights blinked, one after another, as if they had just awakened. She stared at them in shock. People had told her that humans controlled machines with their will. If these machines were waking, it could only mean one thing. The human was close. He was returning. Her chest tightened. She whispered to herself again and again, "Hide. Stay silent. Do not let him see you." Days passed slowly, each one filled with dread. She began to hear things she had never noticed before. The faint vibration of footsteps far above, the soft groan of metal under weight, even the whisper of air that seemed to shift in the tunnels leading to the shelter. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow felt alive, but fear was not the only feeling. Curiosity burned inside her as well. She found herself watching the staircase more and more, as if waiting for the moment the door would open. She hated the thought, but she could not stop. She wanted to see him, the human who owned this place. She wanted to know if the stories were true. One evening, as she ate another packet of food, the shelter shook. A dull thud echoed through the walls, dust falling from the ceiling. She dropped the food and scrambled back to her hiding spot, pulling the crates close around her. Her eyes locked on the door at the top of the stairs. For a long time, nothing happened. The silence returned. But the echo of that thud stayed in her bones. He was out there. Somewhere. The girl began to prepare. She practiced moving silently from one side of the shelter to the other, learning which parts of the floor made noise and which did not. She memorized the hiding places, the crates, the narrow gap between machines, the small crawl space near the pipes. She promised herself she would survive no matter what. But deep inside, she knew survival might not be enough. If the human truly returned, there would be no hiding forever. That thought kept her awake at night. One morning, she awoke to the sound of power surging through the shelter. Lights that had long been dim now glowed brighter, machines whirring with new energy. The air itself seemed different, fresh, alive. Her throat went dry. She knew what it meant. He was coming. She pressed herself into her hiding place, trembling, her eyes never leaving the staircase. Hours passed, but she did not move. She barely breathed. She listened for footsteps, for the sound of the door unlocking. But the door never opened. The waiting was worse than the arrival. Fear gnawed at her. She imagined his face, his voice, the weight of his presence. Would he be like the soldiers who had burned her home? Or like the one soldier who had spared her? The not knowing was torture. Finally, as the hours dragged on, her body gave in to exhaustion. Her eyes closed, but even in sleep she dreamed of footsteps on the stairs, of the door swinging wide, of human eyes staring into hers. When she woke again, the shelter was quiet. The lights had returned to normal. The door remained closed, but she knew the truth now. The signs were clear. The human was near, and soon he would come back. The alien girl woke to the sound she had feared most. The heavy metal door above groaned as its locks turned. The air shifted with a hiss, and a shaft of light spilled down the staircase. For weeks she had told herself this moment would come, but now that it was here, her body froze. Her breath caught. Her heart thundered inside her chest. The human had returned. She scrambled into her hiding place, squeezing behind the crate stacked against the far wall. Dust fell into her hair as she pressed herself into the shadows. She pulled the blanket tight around her body, though she knew it would not protect her. The sound of boots echoed on the stairs. Slow, heavy. Each step struck the metal with a hollow clang, like the beat of a drum announcing her doom. She covered her mouth with her hands. Even the smallest sound would betray her. Then the human appeared. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, his frame wrapped in dark armor worn by time. A weapon hung at his side, and his face was hidden behind a mask streaked with dirt and scratches. He stepped into the shelter and stopped, scanning the room with sharp eyes. The alien girl did not move. She barely blinked. The human walked to the center of the room. He dropped his heavy pack onto the table with a dull thud. For a moment, he stood still, just listening. Then he began to move slowly around the shelter, his eyes narrowing. Something was wrong. He noticed it at once. The bed was not exactly how he left it. The blanket had been shifted, creased by someone else's weight. He touched it with his glove, frowning. His gaze moved to the shelves. Food was missing. Boxes slightly out of place. The knife on the table had been moved by an inch. The human's head tilted. His jaw tightened. "Someone's been here," he muttered, his voice low and rough. The alien girl's heart nearly stopped. She pressed her back harder against the wall, trying to disappear. The human crouched near the machines, his gloved hand, brushing over the controls. He checked the power levels, the air filters, the storage logs. Everything told him the same story. The shelter had been touched, used, lived in. He rose slowly, his eyes scanning the shadows. Behind the crates, the alien girl trembled. She squeezed her eyes shut, begging silently to remain unseen. She thought of her mother's words, "Never let a human find you," but the human moved closer. His boots echoed softly, one step, then another. He stopped just a few feet away from her hiding place. The alien girl's breath grew shallow. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped the blanket. The human's flashlight clicked on, its beam slicing through the dark. It swept across the floor, over the shelves, across the machines, then stopped, resting on the crates. Her body went stiff. The light lingered. For a long moment, the human said nothing. Then slowly, he lowered the flashlight. He turned away. The alien girl's chest ached with relief, but fear still held her tight. Why had he not checked? Why had he not searched deeper? Did he not see her? Or did he already know? The human walked back to the table. He removed his mask, revealing a weary face with sharp eyes. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his stubbled jaw. "This place feels different," he said softly to himself. "Not empty anymore." He opened one of the storage boxes, pulling out food and water. As he ate, he kept glancing around the shelter, his eyes narrowing as if listening for something. The alien girl dared not move. Her muscles burned from staying still, but she forced herself to endure. Hours passed this way. The human stayed in the shelter, eating, checking his supplies, sitting silently at the table. Every so often he looked toward the shadows. Every so often his eyes lingered on the crates. It was as if he knew. When night came, he stretched out on the bed. He closed his eyes, but his weapon stayed within reach. His breathing slowed, steady and calm. The alien girl stayed hidden, staring at him from the darkness. She studied his face, the lines of exhaustion, the hardness of his jaw, the strange calm he carried even in sleep. She hated herself for thinking it, but he did not look like the monsters from her memories. He looked tired, alone. Still, she did not trust it. She could not. As she curled tighter into her hiding place, one thought consumed her. He knows. He hasn't found me yet, but he knows. And the question that haunted her was worse. When he finds me, what will he do? The alien girl had not slept. The entire night she had crouched behind the crates, her body stiff, her eyes fixed on the human. He had rested on the bed, one arm over his chest, the other never far from his weapon. His breathing was calm, steady, almost peaceful. She did not understand how he could sleep so easily. Didn't he feel the same heavy air, the same tension, pressing through the shelter? Or did he already know she was here and simply wait for her to reveal herself? When morning came, he stirred. The bed creaked as he rose, his armor plates clinking softly. He rubbed his tired eyes, then began to move around the shelter again. The alien girl's body grew tight with fear. The human ate quickly, then stood, in the center of the room, scanning everything with sharp, careful eyes. His gaze paused on the shelves, then the machines, then the crates. Slowly, his brow furrowed. He knew. The girl pressed herself harder against the wall, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. The human walked closer. His boots tapped against the floor, steady and slow, each step heavier than the last. He stopped, near the table, picked up his flashlight and clicked it on. The bright beam cut through the shadows like a blade. He swept the light across the shelter, over the shelves, across the pipes, behind the table, then, slowly, toward the crates. The girl's chest tightened. Her heartbeat thumped in her ears, loud enough that she feared he would hear it. The flashlight's beam stopped, right on the crates. Her eyes widened. Sweat gathered on her skin. The human stood still for a long moment, saying nothing, only watching the crates. Then he stepped closer. His boots scraped against the floor, his shadow stretching across the wall. The alien girl bit her lip to stop, a gasp. Her body screamed to move, to run, but she forced herself still. The light hovered, then shifted lower across the floor. It passed only inches from her hiding place. He crouched, his hand pressing against one of the crates. He leaned closer, the beam narrowing, his sharp eyes following the trail of dust on the floor. Her stomach twisted. She had made a mistake. In the days she had lived here, she had left faint marks, footprints, small crumbs of food, subtle signs, but enough for him to notice. The human's lips pressed into a thin line. He raised his flashlight again, slowly, carefully, as if expecting something to leap out. The girl squeezed her eyes shut. Then, a loud noise outside. The shelter trembled. A deep rumble shook the walls, dust falling from above. The human froze, his head snapping toward the ceiling. He lowered the flashlight, his hand reaching instinctively for his weapon. The alien girl's breath caught. Saved. For now. The rumble lasted only seconds, then faded. The human stood, his jaw tight, listening to the silence that followed. After a long moment, he clicked off the flashlight and stepped back, but his suspicion had only grown. He walked across the shelter again, slower this time, his eyes scanning every corner. He touched the shelves, counted the supplies. He looked at the bed, the blanket still slightly disturbed. His face hardened. "I know you're here," he muttered under his breath. The alien girl's heart stopped. Her hands shook violently. Her body pressed so tight against the wall she thought she might disappear into it. The human did not shout. He did not search wildly. Instead, his calm voice carried through the shelter, steady and low. "You're quiet," he said, almost to himself. "But I can feel it. Someone's here." He sat back down on the bed, resting his weapon across his lap. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the shadows. The alien girl dared not move. Her breath was shallow, her chest aching from the effort of silence. Minutes passed, then hours. The human remained patient still, as if waiting for her to slip, to reveal herself. But she would not. She could not. Fear held her in place like chains. Yet alongside the fear, another feeling began to grow. Confusion. Why did he speak so softly? Why did he not tear apart the shelter, search every corner, drag her out by force? Why did his words sound less like a threat, and more like an invitation? She did not understand it. As the shelter dimmed into night again, the human lay back, once more, but this time he kept the flashlight in his hand. The beam was off, but his grip was firm. His eyes stayed open longer, watching, waiting, and the alien girl, still hidden, watched him in return. Two strangers in the same room, one searching, the other hiding, neither daring to move. But one truth had become clear. The human knew, and soon she would no longer be able to hide. The shelter was quiet again, but it was not the same silence as before. It was heavier, filled with knowledge. The alien girl could feel it pressing down on her chest. The human knew she was there. She was sure of it. For days he had moved carefully around the shelter. He checked the shelves, the machines, the bed. He left food untouched on the table as if testing her. He would sit in the chair, his eyes scanning the shadows, and then sometimes his gaze would linger on the crates where she hid. He never pulled them apart. He never forced her out. He only waited. The waiting was worse than discovery. Every second stretched like a blade against her skin. She could not rest. She could not breathe freely. Every time she shifted, she was certain he heard. Every time she took a bite of food in secret, she was sure he noticed. One evening, the shelter grew darker as the power dimmed to its lowest hum. The human sat on the bed, weapon on his lap, flashlight beside him. He stared at the wall for a long time before speaking. His voice was calm, steady, almost tired. "You don't have to hide." The alien girl's eyes widened. Her body went stiff, her heart hammering. He had never spoken directly before, always to himself, always in vague words. But now his voice was clear, aimed at her. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His gaze moved toward the crates. "I've known since the first day," he said quietly. "The food, the bed, the dust. None of it moves on its own." The girl's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her fingers clutched the blanket tighter. She wanted to stay still, to remain invisible. But his words slipped into her mind like knives. "I don't know why you're here," he continued. "But if I wanted to hurt you, I already would have." She bit her lip, fighting back a trembling breath. The human stood slowly. His boots echoed across the floor as he walked closer to the crates. He stopped only a few feet away. His shadow stretched long in the dim light. "I won't force you out," he said. "But know this. You cannot stay hidden forever. Not from me." The girl's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he could hear it. For a long moment, there was silence. Only the hum of the machines filled the room. Then softly he added, "You survived here. That means you're strong. But strength is wasted on fear." Her eyes burned with sudden tears. She hated him for speaking like that, hated him for breaking into the safety of her silence. Yet his words shook something inside her, something she had buried since the war. For the first time in weeks, she wanted to answer. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Fear gripped her throat. She stayed still, forcing the words back. The human sighed. He stepped away from the crates, walking back to the bed. He placed his weapon on the floor and lay down, though his eyes remained open. "You're not my enemy," he said softly, his voice fading. "Not anymore." The alien girl pressed her forehead against the cold wall of her hiding place. Her mind spun. His words clashed with her memories, her mother's warning, the fire, the screams. Could she believe him? Could any human be trusted? But another memory pushed through. The soldier who had spared her life. The human eyes that had shown hesitation. Mercy. She clenched her fists, torn between fear and a strange new feeling. Hope. The night dragged on. She did not move, but her thoughts refused to rest. The human's words echoed again and again. You're not my enemy. When morning came, he rose as always, preparing his pack. He checked his supplies, strapped on his weapon, and paused at the doorway. For a long time he stood there looking back into the shelter. His eyes swept the shadows one last time, and then he spoke again. I'll be back, he said. If you're still here, maybe then we'll talk. The door groaned as it closed behind him, the locks clicking into place. The shelter shook, briefly, then silence returned. The alien girl slowly crawled out from behind the crates. Her legs were weak, her body trembling, but she forced herself to stand. The room looked the same, yet different. The human's presence lingered in the air. His words lingered in her mind. She touched the table where his pack had rested. She stared at the bed where he had slept. She looked at the door where he had stood. For the first time, the shelter did not feel like a cage. It felt like a question, and she did not yet know the answer. Her lips parted. This time the words slipped out in a whisper, soft and uncertain. Not my enemy. The machines hummed quietly around her. The shadows no longer seemed as heavy, but the fear remained. Because she knew the truth. He had found her long ago. And instead of ending her, he had chosen to let her live. Why? That question burned brighter than fear. And the answer would come when he returned.